indivisible liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Who's on? Yeah, you're back. You two are back from the committee, right?
No, meeting we had last year.
Plus Aaron and Mark. So I don't know if we missed anybody, but the chair took the people that were on this committee and took them off, put me on. So it starts again. I don't know how much.
We only
I
met
tried-
once,
You only met once?
and we only talked about the policy that you were trying to rewrite and get approved.
Yeah.
So we didn't really talk about anything else other than the policy.
Okay. Well, I have some ideas, but Karen is the state coordinator?
Yeah.
State guru?
We work closely with RIDE in the child nutrition program, to support district wellness committees.
So can you talk a little bit about what health and wellness is supposed to be about, or a little bit about what it is?
Sure. I think one of the clarifications that I always like to make, and I think we may have talked about it at the previous meeting, was first off, there are two regulations around both having a policy and maintaining this committee, establishing and maintaining this committee. So the regulation around the policy, which was updated and redone here, is a federal regulation that comes out of the USDA. And that's been around since 2007, I think. And over the years, there have been some updates to it and on what's required. And now not only what's required to be in it, but how it has to be communicated to the public, how it has to be evaluated every 3 years. And that's all mentioned. That is in here. And that's what we did. We used a tool called the WellSat, which is used nationally to evaluate the policy, because you will get, and I'm going to use the word audited, they call it an administrative review, but essentially it's an audit that RIDE does. Now I think every 5 years, not every 3 years. It's been an extension, but that they come out to any school that participates in the national school lunch program with all the federal dollars that are coming in. And they will be asking about your wellness policy. They'll want to see it. They'll want to know about your committee, et cetera. So that's the requirement around having the policy. And then the regulation around this committee is a state law. And you have that in here too. So you have that in there. So those are the two, just so everyone knows, the regulatory, what's required of the district. The law itself, when it was written at the time, and we know sometimes how laws are made, but it was when the policy requirement was out, so that they did put in language that said that a member of the full school committee must chair this. But really the best guidance that I always give, and I would say it's the common practice around the state, is that there is a co-chair, because a school committee person is accountable for policy, but not for the implementation of it and sort of the, all of the practices that go on in the school. So that's administration. So usually a shared role, because the committee year to year will be addressing things, not just making sure that the policy is updated and that you're living by the policy, but all of the ideas around how to do that best are done with staff people who are employed by the district. But the one thing that I want to just clarify, because when a lot of people look at a policy, and I know when we did this, you did update it to include language, I believe, if there was language in here. So my point being that the requirement to have this policy was really around, at the time, around addressing the childhood obesity epidemic. And so the requirements around the policy really focus on nutrition and physical activity, health education, physical education, etc. So that is the minimum requirements. So a lot of people, and I'm saying this because a lot of people say, how can you have a wellness policy and mention nothing about mental health? That is a huge issue in our schools today. Or how could you have a wellness policy and say nothing about social emotional health? That
Well,
that's
we have
so
3
important.
clinicians here.
Okay, gotcha.
So-
So the reason why that it's not in here, it's not because the district doesn't believe that that's important to comprehensive student health and wellness. It's because the requirement for this policy focuses on nutrition and physical activity. Not to say it can't, as I said, that's a minimum. And there have been many districts, the last one I just worked with was Coventry, that have put in language around mental health, social emotional health. Staff wellness, there's a small piece in here. Some districts have beefed that up. So again, this is the minimum requirement. You can certainly add more, but we made sure using that assessment tool that looks at the language. And the other point I want to make is not whether you're doing this, because you can have some things in your policy that maybe you're really not following. Or the other thing is sometimes when I've done the policies review, people around the table will be like, well, why did we score a 0 on that? We're doing that at all of our schools. And it's because the language of your policy didn't state it. So that well sat, and you remember, Karen, even a few years ago, we
Yep.
started, and, you know, for the people who were involved, no, that's the tool we used. And so it is looking at the language of your policy, what it states. So that's that. And the idea is that the committee, I mean, I will say that the law is very specific about who should be around this table and part of this committee. And one of the things that our state legislators did include was that it should consist of, and they give a bunch of stakeholders, you know, staff and administrators and teachers and students and community-based professionals. But it does say that it should be 50% or more of non-school employees. And where does it say it here? It's in here, but so that's something to kind of to keep in mind. And really, the idea is, you know, that you make sure you have parents and students and, you know, others who are here. It's challenging, and we can talk about that. We have some examples of things on, you know, it's all about communication, and you have to do it every year because of course your population changes, and it's not always easy to have a time of day. A lot of districts struggle with that. If you want students to be here, it's hard to do after school because they've got jobs and sports and things. And if you want parents to be here, is it, you know, easier to have it at night, but then you're not going to have staff. So it can be challenging.
So that's why we chose 3.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times students could be here. We don't have a student. If anybody knows a student who might be interested in this.
I do. I'll reach out, yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I can get some of my football guys or something.
Sure.
Baseball's in full swing, so I can't get any of them, but
And we have a parent who couldn't make it today.
What ages do you see for students?
I mean, typically it's high school, and I would say I'd encourage more than one. It's very tough for one student to sit around
Right.
a group like this and not be intimidated,
I
but,
was thinking one male, one female.
yeah, that's great. And I think if you can set it up, like to think about a process, like maybe through the high school, is there a group, either athletics or student council or through guidance? Is there a mechanism so that every year they would know, you know, it's good, like if you can find students maybe that are sophomores, you can have, I know in some districts, we've just had incredible
We
students.
run a program with the student assistance counselors, the varsity athletes against substance abuse.
Yes,
So it would be very easy to kind of just link up with a sophomore who join that group to kind of, you know, join, or a junior to join that group, kind of pull up and pull from that. That's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. I mean, obviously, up to you guys and see what you want to do, but that was just what my head was at.
The students involved.
Yeah. And you can get one from, it's easy to get one from Jamie Ferretti at Pilgrim and one from, I think it's Amanda Slocum at Tollgate. You know, so you can kind of have both sides of the city,
yeah,
Yeah, that would be good.
because we all know sitting at this table, some of the experiences are different from
absolutely.
each side of the
Yeah.
city, so.
Yeah, and then hopefully that you can remind them too, that, I mean, it's a great opportunity for their college resumes and applications or community service. So, I mean, I know that hopefully they're interested in it, but also, you know, it's a good thing to be involved on a district-wide committee and to have that leadership position. Yeah.
Okay. Um, this committee, as Karen said, it's regulated by the state, so it has to happen. Now, we've never been audited. We have not been good about having these meetings.
We've
We
been
were-
audited. The food service department's
Oh, you got
audited.
audited by
Yeah,
them?
yeah,
2020, we got cited for not doing this.
yeah,
Really?
Did you never hear about it?
No.
yeah.
That's what.
Yeah, we were
I don't
like,
know.
we got a slap on the wrist for
But
not
they don't-
having
I
it.
think we had a lot of other
Yeah.
things worried about in 2020.
Yeah.
It was like, we had our audit the week before schools closed for COVID.
Oh, wow.
Like, schools were closing and Rod was here, like, doing their audit, like, how many fruits and vegetables, you know, it's kind of, but it
Oh, so
ended, we
they
finished
edit
it.
You folks.
Yeah, like, so like RIDE has like, we have like food service audits, like not just looking at the wellness policy, but in general, looking at all of our regulated policies, like through like federal guidelines and everything. So there's an administrative audit every 5 years now, like you were saying, so.
And also they're looking at the money, a lot of money comes
Next year,
in and out of this
maybe?
program. And making sure that's right. They go out to schools, a handful of schools, they look at your menus, they look at procurement records. And they never used to do this, but now this is part of it. So they'll say, and we actually have, I can share for the next time, but we worked with them to create a checklist for their staff people when they go out. So you can see it's kind of like having the rubric, right? If you're a teacher, here's what you gotta have. So it's very easy to know what you should have to, pass muster with the audit. And typically what they'll do, so that you've got, what do they call it? Cited for a finding. Yeah, so they'll note it in the file that was a finding, you were told to correct the corrective action, which you are. Eventually, if you don't, they could, in theory, keep reimbursements from you, dollars.
Can they do anything about the huge cost that we have for kids who don't pay for their lunches?
Well, I mean, I think,
$50,000 this year.
yeah, I just finished up at the coalition meeting for the Healthy School Meals for All. I think, that's something that's statewide, that there's a lot of people saying enough. We've got to
get.
the system doesn't work anymore, right? For when it was started, it's antiquated. And it's a public school. There's so many things that we know are important to give kids, and nutrition isn't one of them. And we're separating kids based on their family's income or their family's ability, not ability, whatever. And I just said at this meeting, which we have like 42 organizations across the state who are all supportive and part of this coalition. And I'll never forget when, there was a legislator who said, districts need to have skin in the game on this one. And I'm like, skin in the game? People don't understand how it works and what happens. And I said, they do. And eventually, when that debt has to get written off, it's bad debt, they're not getting it back. Where does it come from? Out of the general funds. Now, I know this year RIDE got approval, if you can use some of your food service account funds, but that's just robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, I was in another community and they were thankful that they got approval. Theirs was 80,000, a small suburban, but I'm like, but they were like, yeah, all that new equipment we were going to purchase to improve our cafeterias, not happening. We don't have the money anymore because we took this to pay off the debt.
That 250, who's on the hook for that? Is that us? Is that the school department or the city?
Yeah, I mean,
What?
it's us,
Yeah, it ends up being
It ends up
like,
being the city.
it ends up being covered by our general funds, like
Yeah.
in the end.
In the end.
which is the city, because
And
Yeah,
that's
tax dollars.
because of what? Lack of.
kids who come to school, we have to feed them,
Mhm.
so they go through the line.
They
get
don't
their lunch.
qualify for the
Right, so
services.
They don't qualify.
They
or
don't have a-
have never-
And they don't have money on their
They don't-
account.
they don't
Yeah,
fill out-
right.
they don't-
They
they
didn't
don't
fill
fill
out
out
the form, they very well might qualify,
Right.
but for whatever reason, haven't filled out.
But that's a bigger issue too, because they haven't changed the income guidelines in the state in a long time.
I feel like that's a big issue in itself, is like
You
the
know?
income guidelines are just need to be updated, because like some of the families that are struggling
Even if
have
they did
filled out an
apply,
application, but they're not
Exactly. They're not
qualified
gonna
because
qualify.
And a lot of
of
kids,
how they are.
unfortunately, the only meal that they're getting is here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Where it, that's another thing too, of you talk about wellness and
Mhm.
mental health and stuff like that. All right, I'm getting fed at school, but now I'm worrying about what I'm gonna eat tonight. Do I have food at home? you know?
Or in a lot of cases, you know, one of my brothers is from there, you know.
So,
So the one thing that if, I had sent out an email and I think, I'll make sure, Karen, it might have been before I changed the names and put you on it, so I could resend it, but just giving an update to districts, the wellness co-leads on where this process was, because there's a new website now, that it was actually the food bank that they funded and, which is this, and here's like all the logos of all the organizations who are members of it. But this is a, Healthy School Meals for All, website. And there's a very simple feature on it, contact your legislator, you just click. So this is for individuals, but we're trying to share it far and wide, because when you're at the State House, they're saying, we got to hear about it. It's the, you know, and I understand we don't have unlimited funds, just as the city doesn't, the state doesn't. But this would not, to fund this would not be every community funding their own. It would be the state recognizing we are a small state and looking at doing this community by community by community. We need a state solution for this. And the bills, which you can, when you look at the website, the bills are also linked right here, have the language in it on what's the mechanism, how would this work? And it really is to leverage federal dollars first, to make sure we're doing everything to maximize those federal dollars, and then the state would pick up the balance. So this is one thing I can, anywhere you share it, it helps. They need to hear from people. You have some influential legislators here in Warwick. You know, they need to hear that this is an important issue.
we have the Speaker of the House right here in the city, so
And he doesn't want to hear.
you don't want to hear a lot of things, but
Well,
we try. We do our
yeah,
best.
I know.
Well,
I've met with him. He's got a job and I get it, but you know what? He did say, we got to have more, not just him, but meaning his people saying, this is one of my priority issues, right?
But
It's
if we can see a number of families from
Yes.
Warwick fill that stuff out,
absolutely,
it goes a long way to say,
Absolutely.
hey, next time you see them,
Yep.
you know, Joe.
because this gets sent, directly to them. And then the other thing is, for school districts, and I'll resend that email. It's just a model, resolution. So there are school committees that are writing resolutions and are sending that off to leadership. So that as a school district, as a school committee saying, this is important. And it's just a draft. You can add in language about, I mean, everybody remembers, right? I mean, you can't believe how everyone remembers, because when I'm out there like, yeah, Warwick, I remember, didn't Warwick? And I'm like, yeah, they made national news, which I thought was wrong, calling it lunch shaming and all this, because I've always said,
And we weren't
nobody
trying to do that.
is doing that. I understand
That came
that.
up in our policy.
Yeah. Yeah, and even having there are still communities that have an alternate meal, which they'll call it.
Mhm.
And I get it, some kids might choose that every day, but there is stigma there. You guys know there is in the lunchroom, and even kids that, you know, they know the ones that are coming through who don't have money on account. I mean, I feel like they know eventually there's a bill home. Their parents, they know, whatever their situation is at home, don't have money to pay it, aren't paying it, whatever, but they're hungry. And so what do you do?
Not only that, the other kids know.
I know.
Other thing we're seeing a
Kids
lot
are
of
tough, They
is,
bully.
yeah, we're seeing a lot of parents actually call the office and put notes on kids' accounts saying, I don't want you to give my kid a meal. Do not
Yeah.
charge a meal. So they just, I don't know if they bring along from home, if they just don't eat. But we are seeing a lot of that since COVID, where kids are just, they come up and we say, we can't give you a meal. Your parent put a note on your account and I can't give you a meal. So we are seeing a lot
A
of
lot
that.
of those kids, sometimes they eat their lunch in school.
Yeah, I don't know the circumstances,
You know,
but,
not always, but I.
but it is
some of that,
embarrassing for the cashier to have to tell them that, you know, to put them in that situation. And it's embarrassing for the student too.
Because sometimes, I can't say I've seen it here, but I've been out in cafeterias and I sometimes talk to kids and you see them, they're eating, and I know it's not something they could purchase through food service, like a bag of Takis, like chips, and you know they have that at home, but you can almost feel it. They're finding something cheap that they can bring. And I just remember this so much in an urban ring community, but it was a special day, things like you do all the time. It was at a high school, 3 boys were sitting together at a table. 2 of them were eating this unbelievable meal. They had served local beef. It was this hamburger bar. And these kids were like, oh my God, this is the best burger I've ever had. And, they had their sides of their fruit. They had their meal, beautiful meal. And then 2 of them, and then the one boy had a bag of chips. And I looked at him and he just went, I don't get hungry at school. Now, and I thought, what is wrong with this? They're sitting at the same table and 2 of these kids can eat. I don't know whether they were free. I have no idea. But in a public school, and that one kid sitting there with a bag of chips. And he just said, yeah, when I get home, I eat whatever I can find. But he was kind of saying, and his friends were like, yeah, he never eats. And they weren't really, they don't even think about it. They're just like, he doesn't eat. But right, like, not only like, and I think, why should it be different? Because you think too, some of our urban core districts have done this community eligibility provision because there's enough poverty there. But why should a family and a kid living in Warwick in the same situation be treated differently than a kid who, just because they live in Providence or Central Falls, that they have access to the community and they're able to get free meals? We need a statewide solution.
We do.
So the Title I schools here in the city, the elementary schools, we worked with some of the staff and put these small food pantries in the school to try to identify kids who weren't eating at home and just send them home with, food. And it's discreet. They try either with backpacks or different bags so that it's not embarrassing for kids. But like, that's only because the food pantry or the food bank will do it with Title I. They won't do it with the other schools, where I say it should be district-wide, where if you can support that through, a collaborative like, West Bay and CCAP and another facility outside in the city that are willing to help with that and stock those shelves, it should be done, and that kids can, you don't have a lunch, go down over there, see what you can grab quick, see what you can grab that's semi-healthy, whatever it is. And then kids on the weekend, they go home with some of this food that whatever they want to do. I know a kid that keeps it in his bedroom. So I know, but his mom doesn't eat, somebody doesn't eat, he wants to eat because somebody else is eating all the food, so, which is tough too. But I thought that was a wonderful thing that they do with the Title I stuff, but it's only that.
Right. And again, it doesn't mean it's kind of the same thing at even a more local level. Just because you're not in a Title I, you could be that one family who lives maybe in a wealthier area, but yet you're in the same situation as those kids in the Title I, but you don't get it.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to those income guidelines, because, if you're a single parent or a single person, you, at this point in the world, you almost have to make upwards of $75,000 just to live.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't do that.
And we're in a high cost of living. So the other thing about those USDA guidelines, that those income criteria is the same across the country. So you could live in a rural area of Alabama, right, where the cost of living is so much lower. Now, you could say our wages are higher, but I think housing in particular in this state right now is a real issue. So people are struggling to pay their rents, to pay their mortgages, to pay for,
What are you
and
gonna
then
make a
have
decision on? I gotta
money
pay for a place to live,
for
keep a
food.
roof over my head, or food?
Yeah. So this is something, I mean, we're pushing, we knew during COVID when meals were free, it worked, we had greater access. And I'm gonna say too, make a plug for hardworking food service.
Mm.
There's not a lot of money. What they do with the money that they get, when we had free meals for all, and there's a lot more federal money coming in, and we'd have state money, there's more. And if you knew that was the policy, the program for here on out, there's a lot more money to budget to do. Look at what you were able to do with new serving lines and a new cafeteria, just making things more efficient, making them more pleasant, buying better quality food. Like, all that happens because you invest in it. So we're trying to get the word out to say now's the time to do this.
So I have a question. So can this group and this, committee or whatever you want to call it, can you apply for separate grants from other places to get money to come in and use it towards that stuff? Is that allowed? Like, I'll give you an example, like in the city, Allstate, there's an Allstate in the city gives out $10,000 to different things around, you know, health, wellness, activity, sports, that type of stuff. I know Costco has grants that they give to communities to give money to feed kids. I know Trader Joe's has grants. I know a lot of these places that have these grants that if I didn't know if this particular group could do any of that, if that's a possibility, to try and raise funds to try and help feed kids.
How do you pick and choose who's gonna get the
Yeah.
money? You can't,
That's true too. You can't.
I mean, we use grants for equipment and things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But not grants to feed kids because we have 8,000 kids, and how do we pick and choose who's gonna get that money in their
or
account?
could it just go into the fund that you have, or like the food fund? I don't know.
Like to use
I'm a
for-
little new to that side of things. I don't know what that.
To use
how
for
that works.
purchases or to use for students?
To use towards anything. But that is-
Yeah, like some grants are geared to buying equipment, you know, doing promotions, things like that. But we can't give the money to students to feed them.
Okay.
And it can't go specifically on their accounts, right?
Right.
Just take money.
Yeah, like that would go back to like the picking and
You get into that
choosing.
donation thing again, where if someone wants to donate, they have to specify exactly where it goes, correct?
Yeah.
But people can donate money individually, but if you
Mhm.
just got a lump sum in and the grant didn't specify who it was supposed to go to, then you wouldn't be able to just.
So like if it was to go, let's say it was to get something and donate it, could it go towards like the money owed? Like the outstanding balance?
We have had people make donations to the outstanding, on the
Okay.
balance.
Yeah,
So when that happens, it is hard to do that unless it's specified to the particular student's balances. But we do have like a fund with West Bay Collaborative. So usually when it's a lump sum donation like that,
Right, they run-
it usually goes into the West Bay Collaborative like
I
account.
I remember when we put that together.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
yeah.
that's used for,
So there's no just like general food fund that you guys have that?
not that applies to students.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
That other fund, the West Bay Fund, is for families that don't qualify,
Mhm.
but they meet like the heating guidelines, the
Okay.
assistance
Yeah,
guidelines.
that I know.
So if
Yeah.
they just barely miss the reduced category and they have to apply first, if they barely miss that, then they would apply for the West Bay money. And then that money gets put into their lunch account and it specifies this can only be used for breakfast and lunch. So they get enough money for the entire year.
And it can
But it's
help.
only a certain threshold, like it doesn't go up to people making a certain amount. It's like a smaller threshold.
Yeah,
And it can
so I
also
think
be
we
used
got
to help
that.
pay off their balances as
Yeah,
well.
okay. Makes sense.
But there's not many kids on it.
Yeah,
There's
not
many.
the problem is, the only thing we can't do is like reach out for them. Like
I
the,
get
like we'll
They have to
send
reach out to us
families
first.
the information, but the families have to reach out to West Bay to get that
I can do
finished.
that. That's fine. I'll get a write-up from West Bay and just blast it out there to everybody. I don't care. That's easy. I ain't gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, but like the part of like, the families have to give their like social
They gotta give-
security
yeah.
number, their actual personal information. So
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
get
that's the step that like, once they get to that roadblock, they're like, oh, never mind. And then they stop. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Makes sense.
So
There is-
like,
people are more
that's
and
where
more
that
concerned
roadblock
about
is.
sharing personal information. And we actually made a video a couple of years ago that was translated in Spanish and has it translated and then a voiceover. And we even say, you know, very specifically like ICE in certain communities, they're just concerned about if they're undocumented, they're just not gonna give, and you don't have to have a social security. I just think they're like, you know, and it is one of those things too, like, and I get it, but like, not everyone else has to do this. You know, again, it's only the poor people that are asking that have to do it. And yet it's a public school. That's the part that like, you think, why is it that that's been acceptable, that like food, that's the one thing.
So the program, when you fill it out to get the free, the reduced lunch, do you have to put that information on there?
Yeah, it asks
So
you.
what happens to an undocumented student?
Well, they can't get, so this is, we get into all the weeds of this. There's something called, which is good, that happens now, which is direct certification. So anyone that receives, mostly it's SNAP. So if you're a family that's qualified, it's good. Now they say, well, why should they be filling out these forms? Because they're already qualified for SNAP. We know that. So hopefully, sometimes they miss people because there's different names of kids in the same family, and it can be confusing to do that. But typically they're what's called direct certified. Undocumented can't get SNAP. They cannot get SNAP benefits. So but they can get school meals and they can complete it. And it does say if you don't, you should all look at it and
I
see
want
if
to
you
look at,
could
I'm
fill it
going
out.
to, yeah.
Because it's a little intimidating. And I'll tell you one of the other areas that we may think, oh, this is so obvious, but a lot of people who are, at those incomes, it's not like they have a salary like you all might have, that it's the same. You go like, okay, this is how much I make per year and I'll put this on here. They're either driving for Lyft and they're making this much this time, or they have a seasonal job doing this. And so even the whole idea of putting their income, it's kind of like, how do I do this? Like, what do I put?
Yeah.
And then they just kind of go, oh, I just
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah,
this.
because I've
It's-
only seen the website briefly, and it was only because, Bill, you can remember this, when we had that event at Ward Vets, and we had the people
Yeah,
there
that
setting
was
everything
great.
up.
That's good to
And I
have that,
only
yeah.
got to see it briefly through that, so I would
Yeah.
love to see.
Usually all the different meetings we have at the beginning of the year, we try to push out the
Yeah.
forms and
Yeah.
more
Mhm.
people the merrier.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that helps doing that, right? Making it convenient, do you have the online one?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that helps too. But of course, you think about it, not everybody has, what we learned too was, a lot of people say, oh, is it in different languages? Well, sometimes it's even like just reading comprehension, it's like, oh, you may be English speaking, but just like understanding this federal form and then where does it go? It's private it is not shared, but people don't always believe that, who's getting this information, and there's a lot of stigma around even just filling it out.
Mm.
Okay, so
So I'll re-forward that. Oh, so just to finish, it hasn't gone, the bill had a House hearing and Finance, Committee. And now it hasn't been scheduled. It'll probably be after the break for a Senate hearing. And then we'll see what happens.
It's not on tomorrow's.
It's not,
Okay.
no.
I'm gonna be there tomorrow, so.
Okay, but,
Yelling at them guys.
yeah, I know, they're hearing
You
from
know, they're always cutting something,
a lot, yeah.
so they're hearing a lot of stuff, so.
Rebuilding the cliff walk though.
Yeah, yeah.
Stop
I'm so
taking care
bitter
of the
about this.
millionaires.
I'm so bitter about the cliff walk.
No, we're giving millionaires tax breaks.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. That's right.
That's wrong.
That's the thing, like I have a partner from Newport who has so many of the similar issues and they're rebuilding all this other stuff. And they're like, we have kids that aren't eating food and not getting, housing and like, half that city does really great. And
Oh, but people don't realize.
No,
it.
the other
half-
It's a
They
very.
don't realize the other half of
high
Newport
poverty
is really.
community.
Back in the sixties and seventies, and even before that, I grew up in Newport.
Um,
And most of the people there were just middle income, and then you had people who lived in, like Park Home and Tony Hill and stuff, and got housing, and things were a little bit more generous back then. And, but now, the kids who go to Newport schools a lot of them are mostly poor kids, and they don't have anything else, because the ones with money, they all go to private schools, which that's not how it was,
Yeah, well, the middle, it's like a lot of places just has, they can't even, I heard that, well, it's getting off track, but Newport can't even get you just can't get, nobody can afford to live there.
No, they can't.
The whole island, the Quidneck Island has become, and think about a lot of those jobs in hospitality and restaurant, landscaping, they're not well
They're not
paid.
there's not a lot of high paying jobs,
Right.
Sales, a lot of retail.
Mhm.
So, and a lot of.
Yeah,
customer
they're a
service.
community that's very much,
Everybody looks at,
Similar.
oh, they're rich. No, they're not rich.
They're
The
not.
average person who lives in Newport is not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination.
We all know there are big issues and bigger issues than what we may or may not be able to tackle here. I don't know, I feel like we need to almost hyper focus on one or two things that we want to see done or even realistically can get done. if we want to set ourselves up for success, we don't want to fail at this thing, you know, and kind of really hone in on some of that stuff. And I'm a big believer in honing in on the resources. I mean, I've done a really, I've worked extremely hard to change the narrative in this city as far as around nonprofits on not competing with each other anymore and really working together. And it's come a long way over the last 3-4 years, and the agencies in the city really want to work together. So, you know, utilizing some of that outside stuff too can be super helpful, so. But it all depends.
Coming up, and it's not being run by health and wellness or anything, I wish it was, but there's gonna be a mental health fair,
May 1st.
May 1st, that's, vets. And I'd like to see us get more involved in those sorts of things because it's all connected. When you look at the whole person, it's all connected. You know?
It's easy. You can come to, I mean, that all comes through and filters through that substance abuse task force that I have and that we do with the heads and stuff. So I'll start inviting, send me emails. I'll invite you to whatever you want to come to. You're more than welcome to come and experience some of that stuff and see where that stuff is going and doing. Because I agree with you, Karen. I think going and seeing what's out there, seeing the stuff at that mental health fair and other things like that is very beneficial.
I mean, there was a time when you didn't even talk about mental health. I had a grandparent call me today, telling me that the grandson who she's his ward, and he's depressed and he doesn't want to go to school and he's a senior. And it's really frightening for her. And
It's everywhere. It just to whoever, you can have it all. I got one of my guys, one of my baseball guys, coming out of, you know, a facility, and he's a popular kid, has a lot of friends and has this thing, and his life punched him in the throat and he just didn't know what to do, you know, especially with his family dynamic and stuff like that. It's like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do. That all comes around. And that's what I said earlier. It's like, yeah, we want to focus on food and feeding kids, but at the end of the day, you know, the only meal they're getting is at school. They're worried about what's going on at home and where I'm going to get my next meal, or am I going to eat all weekend? You know, they're not focused on school.
well, during the pandemic, we were picking people food.
Yeah.
They were picking up food for their weekends and everything else. It was really good. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's no more pandemic, so there's no more food insufficiency. That's just,
It doesn't just go away.
it's crazy. So how do we change that? How do we bring more awareness? You know, and I know teachers and principals and folks who take money out of their pockets every day and give the kids, pay for kids' lunch.
Yeah.
You know? And,
Yeah, I know a few that still doing it.
Yeah.
so I think at this point, we're kind of wide open. I wanted to give everybody, you know, the copies, you know, where we are with this, our policy, which is rather lengthy, and then with state law.
I think it was about 2 years ago, Karen, you reviewed that.
Yes, so
Yeah.
I think you're,
I remember sitting down with you and.
Yep. so the date, let's see, do we have a date on it? Yeah. 24, yeah, 2/24. So you're
Just
good with that.
updated it.
So that was
And we actually have a subcommittee, a temporary subcommittee going about, phys ed and things like that, because supposedly we don't give, high school students enough minutes.
right. That was the last time we met. Remember, there was, yeah.
So it says 100 minutes. And we do 100, but it's, the
It
math
does
is.
say health class can count towards.
Oh,
it.
yeah, health, it's PE health together,
Yeah.
but I think it was, I can't remember.
It wasn't
why
enough
here, but it
combined.
wasn't-
Walk used to be one of the best because we had PE almost about every day, right?
Yeah.
Before tennis.
We had either three sections of, PE, one section of health. And
Yeah.
yeah, so every quarter you had.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it was 3/4 phys ed, 1/4 health.
Yeah.
And I always hated health.
So what replaced it?
Semester,
Well,
a
it's-
quarter and a quarter.
Yeah.
And then
What
electives.
took its spot?
I think like art and
It's
stuff.
graduation requirements.
Like,
Oh, okay.
Other graduation
Yeah,
And the
requirements.
school day never changed, like lengthwise?
The length, it hasn't changed. It meets
It's the same as
regulation,
it
and
was
then
back then.
we have a 7-period schedule of 6 meet per day, so
Mhm.
schedule is kind of a barrier to,
We need to go
Explaining
over our
anything.
schedule or something like that.
so that's where we're at. Middle level, it seems the committee met, and the middle level is happy with what's offered there, and at the elementary level, there's some suggested changes, and the work of the committee is to make recommendations to the school committee at this point. It's not necessarily, change anything, but it's to make recommendations, and
At
then
least look at it.
then the recommendations from there can be incorporated into work throughout next year, the year after.
Well, that makes life a little easier because something's already being focused on physical activity. And once that finishes, we can let that run its course, where we wouldn't necessarily have to address that right away until they finish what they have to do. And then we can either add to it or figure something out, but it gives us the other 2 or 3 pieces to work on. Instead of having to focus on 4, we can focus on, 3 or 2.
Well, at this point, they're gonna make some draft recommendations tomorrow morning. There might be another meeting or 2, but the committee, is over by July.
Okay.
It's a temporary committee, so.
Temporary.
So final recommendations will be made to the school committee.
Does anybody have, any ideas, thoughts, dreams for what we could do in any area of health and wellness, seeing our kids and our staff and everybody as, whole beings, not just as someone who needs to eat or someone who needs to learn, but, the whole, we're there for the whole person, to educate the whole person.
Curious, I'm assuming you 2 are teachers, correct?
No.
Who's a
I'm a
teacher?
social worker.
You're a social worker.
Psychologist.
What are you seeing in the schools?
I see kids who are hungry on a daily basis.
Okay.
Yes. they
As far as
come to us
that
for
goes,
food,
as far as
yeah.
food, oh, yeah. And my wife's a 3rd grade teacher at Lippet, and I can't count the number of times that we puts things in their backpack, or whatever's left over goes home to certain kids.
So how do you say to a little kid?
Well, they ask, what about my brother? What about so-and-so?
Yeah.
What about, so that's a very common occurrence. Yeah, or I'm saving
And they're
this.
aware enough to say that.
Oh, yeah. Or they'll
Which
say, I
is-
don't need my 2 chips. I'll have 1 and I'll save this one for later.
Right,
And we just make sure that we don't there's 26 in our classroom and we don't like 26.
I'm thinking like more about like, how do we take the stigma? Like, how do we minimize that a little bit? Whether we have a dashboard of resources or open houses, like everyone's getting lunch forms or information on things. Not just because we see families who are not filling out the
I'm not
forms.
filling form out. I just think back to when there was the big push to making sure that everyone had to have the BCI done for them to volunteer, and that they were at the open houses, they were at those things. And as a result of that, we had a lot of people who filled forms out so they could volunteer. So we could do that. I mean, there was
Right.
things that
Yeah.
can't happen in that way. But I see a lot of kids whose family will say, I have no, you're not building that one.
And is there a particular reason behind it?
They're scared, they don't understand it, they're
Yeah.
afraid that it
They
could
work on a
impact.
table or,
Right, there are other resources, I
Legal
can't, if I get
issues.
this, then I might be, not be able to be, eligible for that.
right.
So maybe some
Yeah, who's gonna
educational
come
type
after?
stuff would probably go a long way, maybe inviting them. I don't know who kind of manages that.
The
That
food
area,
service department.
food service department.
Yeah,
Maybe we
so-
could have somebody at an event, like Karen said about events and stuff like that, of just educating the community on what we're doing, or having them at open houses, or having them at different things, like just educating. I mean, it's a difficult process. I'm in that boat all the time, where you try to educate the community, you only get a certain amount of people, but if we can reach a larger audience, when we know, like you said, when we know that they're all at this particular thing, or, like an open house or a thing like that, where it might be beneficial to just educate them on, do's and don'ts, what to look for, what not to, like, do you qualify? Yes, that certain things that you have won't get you thrown off this, that type of thing, just so that people are not nervous.
The other thing is, like you said earlier, it's expensive to live, Mike. And you have a family, you could have someone making 6 figures, but have 4 or 5 kids, and
Yeah.
things are tight.
Yeah.
Things are tight.
For
We
sure.
really do get a lot of applications. The thing is, a lot of them are paid status when we get them. Most of the applications we get are paid status.
And do they have to fill out, not to keep popping on, they have to fill it out every year.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. It expires,
when you're
it's a yearly
That's a good
application.
Or when your
It's a
income
shit.
changes, so if you lose your job in the middle of the year, the parent can fill out a new one.
Mhm.
Okay, but if. All right.
But at
They
least
have to
one-
do it every year,
Yeah.
which is difficult to get people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we are at all open houses to like push that. Like we go to every open house at the start of the school year. We have like a table, info packets that we hand out. We just can't force families to do it. So like we try to push that information out there. We have it posted on our food service webpage, like on the Warwick School website, but we can't force families to do it.
We can't know.
Yeah, so that's the
but
hard
one
part.
thing
And it's not retroactive, correct?
No, so that's also a problem we run into as well. So if they had a balance at the start of the year and then filled it out in December, any balance from September to December, they owe
They owe.
still. But we usually, in those cases, we're like, okay, but you're eligible, so now call West Bay. Here's the information here. We can help you pay off that balance from the in-between, but then they have to call West Bay and then they have to go through that process. So
And that's the thing.
That's
where
another
people-
step.
People get turned right there is, well, I already did all this. Now I gotta go do it all again? I
mhm,
don't want that.
yeah.
And that's
It's
the
just
thing where-
easier when it becomes
Yeah.
overwhelming. I think that's human nature. You just kind of go like, oh,
Now, do you have that in, how many languages do you have that in?
Right now, just English and Spanish, but the application itself, like through the website, we use like Link or Titan, like when they go on the site, there's a whole drop down
There's a-
menu of
okay,
languages
all right.
for the online application.
Okay.
So like they can choose whatever language
Whatever
to,
language
and
it
it
is,
would,
okay.
if they're filling
Which
it
is
out
good.
online, it'll change to that language.
That's cool.
But as for like the printed PDF copy, we only have like English and Spanish on our website posted.
But as Ally said, how do we take the stigma out of it? No,
Well,
Yeah.
and we were just chatting sidebar, so forgive me.
okay, no problem.
I don't know anything about this. I work with families, Ally works with families. Oh, would it be something that we would then go and educate the staff on?
That's a good point because
The
I
more
also
people
feel like that's also a problem we have too, is like that communication within the schools is not the same. Like we reach out to families from like the admin side of
Right.
food service.
But they're
We
not
reach
as
out to
comfortable.
families.
you're the kind of. people-
Yeah, but then they don't know who we are. They're
And I
just
don't
like,
know
oh,
enough
food
about-
service is
Right.
reaching out to
I
us,
just
but
know Bev Bird, contact her.
Yeah.
I don't know enough to.
It's more I've worked in other districts. It's more effective when it comes from people like you and principals.
Mhm.
That's what
Principals
I'm
in
saying.
other
The
districts were
principals-
much
Yeah.
more involved in this whole process and getting people to fill out applications and getting students to pay their balances. And it was just much more effective here. There's really not much principal involvement. So,
yeah, there used to be
um,
years ago, but then I don't know what stopped, but it helps a lot when there's more involvement from the
So many
schools.
times we start a meeting, it might be a disciplinary issue or mental health issue, and then it turns into, well, we're having financial issues and the family has. they're disclosing
Yeah, we
things.
can
So I
send you
think
the
that would be-
file and you guys can or we can send you copies and you can keep them right in your office and.
Or even if
Even
you
like-
have a presentation
Yes,
where
like
we could have a fact,
Yeah.
a meeting
Yeah.
where we have
Yeah.
staff meetings and
Yeah.
you could give
Mhm.
some input and we
Yeah.
would be able to ask questions. And then I don't want to take up too much of your time throughout the day, but I think
No, that would be helpful for us to like, that would,
Really couldn't streamline some of the social supports.
yeah.
Yeah, like educating the teachers and stuff on the social supports and where to go and what to do and how to do it. I mean, you can push that warwickcares.org. I mean, Ann and I
Yeah.
really, I gave her every type of resource I have, you know, and anything that West Bay had and anything that all that stuff had to have it, but you can maybe put something on that from them and, you know, from the food services thing and, you know, or an educational piece on that. I don't know if she can update that or how you guys are operating that site at the moment, but that could be helpful too, to give to them to say, hey, here's this stuff, but there's more information on this, go, you know,
Right.
but, you know, to your chance.
But that's a good point of like, even if we had more of a connection with the schools to like, even if you guys helped us with like, if you know you're meeting with a family that should be filling out an application and don't have one in, like you can help them get to that point, like, or have a contact with us, be like, you know, this family, I met with them, like we could then reach out to them from there or something like that. That would help
We said-
get that.
You can't tell them to go and do it, but
We can tell
We
them,
can
but
tell
then
them,
they
but
walk
they
out
don't
the
follow,
door and
yes.
don't follow. through.
Yeah.
And then having somebody kind of help them walk you through it would be beneficial. Yeah, okay, makes sense. All right.
Just if they, the more we know, the more we can make them feel comfortable.
Right.
We can answer their questions
Mhm,
on a level where they're willing to do it. Because I filled that out 3 years ago, I didn't qualify,
mhm,
or whatever the case may be.
yeah,
So I think the more information that the people who work with the kids on a consistent basis across the board.
mhm,
And also the fact that not only we have that, but we have West Bay who, they get donations, and there's that whole food program that we put together back in 2020. I think.
I mean, and has, the board has, we can get money. I mean, we're gonna run out soon, so I might as well spend it. Yeah, give it.
I'm just thinking,
Speaking of that, you're gonna get a stipend in like 2 weeks.
Somebody got stipend?
Oh, it'll come across either your desk or Lynn's,
All right.
all right?
I'm just thinking when we were collaborating with Thrive, or we were the Kent
Yeah,
Center back in
they
the
come in
day,
and-
they would come in and they would walk us through the process, and when we understood it, we could then relay the information to the family, so they felt more comfortable.
yeah,
Well, what
Like
about
down
what-
in
that's a good
Newport,
point.
down in Newport, in the junior high, we had what was called a social service mall. So you had all the agencies available, so the kids could come through, they needed help, the parents could come in, and they had them like every week.
Yeah.
They had them, so.
What
All
about
of
doing
it's so
something like
big.
that Project Aware grant too? You know, they have additional staffing and help and additional mental health resources and different stuff, and that's kind of with Thrive too, has a partnership in that where you can kind of get back to what you were just talking about with having, Thrive explain a lot of that stuff. I know they're just, you're only, Mrs. McCaffrey, am I wrong? Is it just in Winman at the moment?
Believe so, yeah.
Okay, so it's just in Winman at the moment, but again, at the high school, if it starts to gain traction and go that route, you can do stuff like that with the additional support.
Yeah, I was using that as an example of how we were able to build that collaboration. Yeah, I think, but if you could, we could certainly get you the dates of when they're meeting.
Yeah,
But more and more schools have become less of where you go to learn your ABCs and
mhm,
more of a full service.
yeah. I will
Sad.
say, like, elementary schools, we have a lot more applications filled out than high schools. Like, high schools and middle school, like, that's kind of where it drops off. Like, we don't have as much filled out in those levels, where I feel like more of them probably are eligible.
And there's less, right, engagement. I mean, that's what happens. Parents are more engaged with the
Mhm.
schools when their kids are little and then
Mhm.
kind of,
You gotta hit them when they're there, you gotta be able to, because otherwise they walk out the door and you're never gonna get back in,
Mhm.
so.
And we'll wrap this up, but, if folks can think about how we can, or what we can do if we come up with ideas, or see other programs or things like that, how to take the stigma, how to make things more available to people. Just seems like you can go on the internet and get anything you want nowadays. But those common things that should be available, like, well, this is, this might help your family or that might help your family. We just don't have that one-to-one engagement as much anymore.
I think if you get some parents and students in here, we might get some good ideas.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can tell us firsthand, what they're looking for.
Mhm.
So,
yeah,
if
students are
anybody,
great.
I have
That's a
one
good thing.
parent, he couldn't come today, hopefully come in the future.
Talk to some of the
You won't.
I doubled it.
You're a parent, yeah. I was gonna say, we can split it with you.
I mean, the principals might know a few parents who are active in the school that might be good for the committee,
Yeah.
like not putting it out to everybody,
Right.
but maybe just reaching out to principals and saying, do you have any,
The principals,
proactive parents that are concerned about
Or
these
reaching out
things?
to PTAs or PTOs or whatever they are, those folks are always active, and if you can get one of them to come, like, bring others too, I like that.
And they might bring their student, their child. I have elementary kids. That's what I was saying. What age do you have? My oldest will give you her opinion.
Well,
Fourth grade.
well, they're usually great for the,
Huh?
Whether you like the opinions of.
Yeah.
yeah, for the food advisories. They love giving like,
Yeah.
feedback on what they
Mine
like.
ate school lunch all year, but recently she doesn't want to eat school lunch because the line is too long and she does not want to wait in the line. So she stopped she's been making her own lunch every day just because she does not want to wait in line.
Well,
So
they don't
that's
have a lot
another
of time.
issue.
Yeah.
That's another
They
issue.
don't have a lot of, it is, because
Mhm.
it's their only time that they can chat. I
Yeah.
know that a lot are like, I'd rather be with my friends and talk than
Mhm.
wait in the line. Yeah.
So for next meeting, how does everybody feel about Wednesday?
That's good.
Wednesdays look really good, to be honest.
About the 22nd
Well, thank
of May or something.
Hmm.
Well, how often,
Maybe
I think I
another
asked this last
15th.
time, how often do the committees meet?
Yeah, so
So
we
we've
Once a
never
month,
really
most
had
of us.
Once a month?
it depends. Some do
Yeah.
once a month, well, not in the law, but really the best practice is quarterly. At least districts choose to meet monthly, some quarterly.
Okay.
But we really need to get up and running.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think monthly.
yeah, and then if we're in a good
So maybe
spot, you could
monthly
always do that
initially.
next year if you want.
Any day works.
How about the 15th of May?
That I can't do for sure.
Would it be the same time this time?
Yes.
You do the 22nd?
The 22nd, I have to be in Providence for 5. So I could do that, 3, 4, 5, I could do that.
Okay.
So the 22nd at 3:00. And I forwarded Karen that, the email with the update on the Healthy School Meals for All with the website. I mean, that's even something, I mean, I don't know if principals push out to, do they have newsletters that go out?
Some do, some don't.
The
But I'll-
elementary, directors, like
Concerned
elementary
about
office
this, you
sends-
know, and then you could
But
bring
the
it up to
principals are the
the,
ones that are
Some send
expected
weekly
to.
messages, some bi-weekly messages.
But
Yeah.
Nobody always
the,
ends the week with a message out. to
the principals
community.
are the ones who have to go to the parents and say, you owe
right.
for your kids' lunches.
Yeah.
And not to send it, you know, calling out people, but just saying, if you're interested in, this is an issue across the state, you know, and there's a, you know, push in place to get this to be a state program like it was. And people remember, I mean, well, you have new people too. That's the thing. You always have new people coming in too, but like that was very hard. You saw it after COVID because they were for 2 years, you know, they were used to having it for free. And then if you only started school with little kids and then you're like, what's this now?
Yeah.
You know, that I have
And
to,
some are in all year round.
Yeah.
And now we're back to nothing because there's no more COVID. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
yeah.
We also can't like refuse a meal too. So like some kids may not even realize as they're going through the line typing in their code that they're buying a meal and it costs money. Like they're just, I'm getting lunch. So that balance goes up without them realizing it too sometimes.
Yeah. I don't, it just, the more I'm involved in this, the more I think about it, it just makes no sense in a school, as you said so well, Karen, it's not, no longer schools. I mean, right? Don't we all remember when schools closed? Like people lost their minds, like so many things were like, how are we going to function? You know, schools are the center of communities in so many ways. For so many services, it isn't just teaching the ABCs anymore, you know? And that was one of the things that these people had to, on a dime, turn that around and figure out, because everyone was like, how are kids going to eat? That's how in this country, I mean, so many kids get fed. And it's just, yeah, to think that we're going through and how much effort and staff time and all of this, that it's just this administrative burden. Not that you'd still have to be accountable for it, obviously, and the money and everything, but not to the same degree. And it would just be all kids, if you want a meal, your daughter may still choose to make her lunch in the morning, and that's fine. That's the other thing. Sometimes people, I will say, Speaker Carchi will say, well, what do you mean? Why should we be paying for wealthy families? First off, you know, a lot of wealthy, he was mentioning a few, well, I'm like, their kids do not go to public school. Like, let me just say that right now. You know, it's only public school kids. We're not looking to, you know, and it's only making them accessible.
Joe didn't even go to public school.
Yeah.
So who will be responsible for like contacting principals to see if they have any parents and students that could come to the next meeting? Because I would like them to, I think it would be helpful for our meeting. So I just want to make sure that does get done before we meet again. I don't know if I'm the appropriate person. I will, but.
I don't
Okay.
know, yeah, maybe you can send a message, or if Patty, I know
Yeah.
Ms.
we'll both
Kuzno
send a
is
message.
for the
Oh,
elementary
I wanted
schools,
to
right?
mention something too.
We can both send a message.
Could I have share some good news since this was kind of a
Yeah.
downer of a meeting? Okay, Patty Cusino is fabulous and have been working with her. So some of you may know, through Rhode Island Healthy Schools Coalition, fully funded by Blue Cross. We have a program called Recess Rocks in Rhode Island. And it trains elementary schools staff, adults. People think you have to train kids how to play. Well, in some cases you do, that it's playgrounds have become places that there's bullying that goes on. It's not inclusive. Some kids don't really know what to do. They kind of stand up against the wall. So this program has the principal all participate, the PE teacher, and then other staff from the school, and go through 2 days of training. And then the coach who does the training will go out to the actual, each of the individual schools. And Patty coordinated with her. Every Warwick Elementary School has been through it. And I went to, well, only one of the days. The second day I couldn't go. But our trainer said, the Playworks trainer said, I've never met a bunch of more excited people and engaged, that these Warwick schools were terrific. It was on a PD day, both of them that happened. And so now they've gone through it. They've had it all scheduled through May to have the coach go to their school to see their playground, because it teaches you how do you set up the playground to what kind of games, this section, so kids have choice, but it's a lot to do with SEL skills too, positive behavioral management. So anyway, that was really great. And after the schools go through, we have these giant banners that say, I don't remember now, that's Recess Rocks, but it says active play, or we believe in, oh gosh, I'm forgetting what it says, but, and it has the name of the school. And so every school will get one of these banners and they can display it somewhere. But again, a positive sign that, and we all know kids learn through play. In elementary school, that's so much a part of it. And that the school believes in play. So they're all going to get those banners.
That's sweet.
Anyway, yes,
Love that.
yeah, yeah.
So
What, do you have elementary kids?
I'm laughing. I was originally a phys ed teacher.
Oh, yeah.
I'm laughing. I'm like, I got the wrong line. I should have been
Oh.
coaching that line.
Well,
I
yeah,
should have done
yeah.
that.
Well, that was the other thing. It was in many places, the principals will say, because they're like, oh, and they all come with their sneakers on and,
Yeah.
and they're all playing together. And a lot have said it was a good staff building activity because you're there and, you're kind of, yeah.
So our next meeting is the 15th at 3. 22nd.
Yeah.
22nd.
So you're welcome.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you all for coming.
Something, you have to do all that?
Get a motion to.
Huh?
I don't think you, I mean, I've never done that before. I don't know. But if you want to,
We're not that
we'll
formal.
listen.
Um,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.